No.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to leave now. Okay.
See you later.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Alright, am I free to let everybody in?
Yeah. Phil sent me my crib notes, and I told him, I said, Phil, I'm going to need a GPS to follow this. So,
True.
more hand scratch on here.
The other door?
Heavy security in this here Grand Bay.
Bad neighborhood.
Yeah, it's like vaping and that security thing right there.
You know what she's going to do? She's going to make it her job for the next 4 years to make herself known.
Oh yeah. She has an agenda.
Yep.
I was surprised this morning to get that notice here from FCM about the president having to step
Poor
down.
Jack. Well, he was running for re-election. He was deputy mayor, and he was running for mayor against the incumbent, Christine Blair, and he lost the election by about 300 votes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So he's out.
So he's out. Yeah. No, Jeff Stewart.
Stewart.
Yeah, Colchester
Yeah.
County.
He
Nova
seems like a
Scotia.
very nice guy.
Oh, he's lovely. Yeah. Yeah. It's too bad.
Oh, that was a risk, wasn't it?
So Nancy, you need to stay calm.
Yeah.
You're all fired up here.
He must have been very confident. That
Yeah, he thought he was going to take it.
So was it an incumbent that received the will of the people?
Yep. Yeah. So
Oh, I know.
Christine
You
Blair
guys
is
have done
the
absolutely
current
outstanding.
mayor.
Existing there, and she
this
won
is-
again.
Yeah, she won a third term. Yeah. Hi, Trevor. Good for you.
I'm good, and yourself?
I will let them know that the extra 300,000 does not.
Yep.
That's and Steve said the same thing to me this morning. He came out with the garage.
So now that I have you on.
Yeah.
I'd like to, if it's possible.
All right, we all ready to go? Phil, you all ready to go?
With you?
All set? John and Ray, are you with us?
I'm here, yeah.
All right, time right now is 10:22. We'll call this meeting to order. Record of attendance, let the record show that everyone is in attendance. And could I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So approved?
Seconded?
Libby?
Rod
Yep.
and Libby? On the question? Those in favor?
Right.
Those against? Motion carried. Could I have the approval of the minutes, please?
The agenda, we have to make changes to the agenda.
Hmm?
We have to make changes to the agenda. Yeah. Add those two things to the agenda.
Oh, yes.
All right.
Okay, on the agenda, we have to add two items. Item number 8, employee contract. And
5.1.
5.1, we'll have a comment from Mary Grant.
Yeah, and then just approve the agenda with those changes.
Accept the
Yeah.
amendments.
Yeah, resolution from close.
Resolution, yes, on 5.1.
Do you okay with the amendment?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
So could I have approval of the agenda?
It was accepted by the first and the second, right?
Okay, on the question? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Motion carried. Approval of the minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Written seconder,
One second.
Dewey. On the question? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Motion carried. Disclosure, conflict of interest. Do we have any? None noted. Item number 3, verbal update from Phil.
Great, thank you. I will go through these quickly. The first that I wanted to share with the board is just the timeline for Aquatic Center enhancement study. We're still proceeding with that. We have received an initial draft and we've provided some initial feedback as a response. What's new is that we're going to be organizing a virtual meeting with several of your staff in the facilities and recreation domain. That will be happening likely sometime in November, and where the consultants will be presenting their findings, and they'll use that feedback to really narrow into a recommendation. That recommendation will be submitted to the Canada Games Aquatic Center Commission, who will then provide a recommendation to our Regional Facilities Committee, who will eventually give this board a recommendation which should bring us somewhere into early 2025. So February, March would be the target date for that recommendation. Just want to make sure you're aware that that's the process. It's not lost. It's still moving ahead, and we're making some progress. The other item I wanted to share with you is something I've talked about at length, but we have not pulled the trigger on it quite yet, is we do intend as early as next week, if all plans go forward, to submit our first newsletter to each one of your councils. And we'll be submitting them directly to your councils on how what's happening at the FRSC. The main focus will be on what's happened at the last board meeting. So that will be an important piece. It'll be a little summary. And we heard that feedback through our board that would be helpful to get that information. And you could certainly elaborate upon that if need be. Other pieces will be, engagement opportunities with the FRSC, FRSC's progress on some of its major initiatives, but really just building this regular communique between the FRSC and council members, as well as the intention would be senior staff of each one of your communities. So if you could give your council members just a heads up on that. It will be coming through a specific email account called information@fundyregion.ca. So if there's bounce backs or people didn't get it, they'll maybe see some initial obstacles in getting this out for a first time, but please keep us in check if that is the case. Next is on the next FRC board meeting. We have a summit. We have Neil Jacobson here today, who will give us a little presentation later on in the agenda. We would have a very busy November 28th if we had a board meeting plus a full afternoon regional summit. It would be a long day. So we are currently projecting to try to push that meeting to December 12th and essentially make 2 meetings out of 1. We were supposed to meet in December as well, but we think that there is not, we can do it all on the December 12th date. So right now, that is the current plan. I've reviewed it with the chair. I wanted to wait for today to see what happens today first before we formally send those out, because if there's a need for other meetings, we'll certainly accommodate that. But that is the current vision for a meeting schedule for the coming 2 months. This Saturday we have a big event. You've heard Janine from our landfill education team promote the reuse event this Saturday, which occurs at the exhibition park in St. John from 9 until 2, and this is where we're really taking donated or gently used items instead of tossing them out, that we can give them away. It's a great initiative. We get funding through the Environmental Trust Fund to support this. Last year it was a really strong showing. 370 kilograms of old electronics were collected. 6 26-foot cargo trucks were filled with materials. So there's a significant amount that people will give and that can go back. that takes it out of our landfill. It's a great story, and we give it back to a variety of charities, including Salvation Army, First Steps, Habitat for Humanity, Bobby's Hospice, amongst many others who receive this, who receive these donations. Also, we completed Sustainability Week in end of September. It was new for us to do something like this. It included a whole bunch of different employer kits and citizen kits, local government toolkits. For our first initiative in this foray, we received over 29,000 views online and close to 600 engagements related to it. So certainly a space that we think we can build upon, that we can celebrate. But this is an interesting space that FRSC might be able to provide greater value in the future. Did also want to just mention that we are, as you know, always submitting for funding accessibility. It's part of our mandate, trying to keep things cost low. We have reapplied for the Housing Accelerator Fund for the rural district, for the Fundy Rural District, as well as Fundy St. Martin's. They've reopened it. I'm not sure, Director Riddell, if you know this, but you recall we were unsuccessful the last time, but they've reopened it and actually encouraged those who were unsuccessful to reapply. So we've just basically dusted off that old application and resubmitted with the hopes of accessing those funds. So I'll keep you both submitted or updated on that. I know for Fundy St. Martin's you had formally approved that submission. So I'll keep you posted, Ray, on that as it goes through. We've also are finalizing our Canada Public Transit Fund Metro Region Agreement Stream application that is likely to be done in the coming month. And this is the time of year that we also apply for the Environmental Trust Fund, which has been very good to us. I think that's all that I'll share with you right now on a verbal update, and we'll move along in the agenda.
Thank you, Bill. Item number 4, seeking a motion to approve the consent items.
So moved. Second.
On the question? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Motion carried. Item number 5, reports, recommendations. Nancy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I would like to bring a resolution from closed session as Chair of the Regional Facilities Commission. And I move that the Service Commission Board approve the addition of $100,000 to the 2025 Service Commission budget towards the operational investment into TD Station as per the conditions established by the Service Commission Board in closed session.
You've heard the resolution. Could I have a motion to approve?
Mr. Chair, we need a seconder, and then I would like to speak to it.
Sorry. Could I have a seconder? On the question?
So may I have permission to speak to this? And I would just like to speak to the activities of the Regional Facilities Committee and the planned disbursements to the 5 regional facilities for 2025 with specific reference to TD Station. So TD Station is operated and managed by the Harbor Station Commission and OVG 360. The Service Commission is simply an investor into the facility, but a very significant investor of taxpayer dollars, public money which comes from the 7 local governments which are represented around this table and on the screen. And I say significant because in 2024, the investment in TD Station was greater than $1 million of operating funds and $1.2 million in capital for a total of $2.3. And the investments planned for 2025 are more than $1 million in operating funds and $1.4 million in capital, for a total of $2.5. So there's a very significant taxpayer or public money going to TD Station. The Service Commission is concerned about the deficits at TD Station and the need for the past 2 years, more than $1 million going to the operation of TD Station. Also, there's been another change in the past couple of years with local governance reform, and that has led to the communities surrounding St. John having to pay capital on all of the regional facilities, as well as operating costs. St. John has had this for some time, but it's new for the rest of us. And we have 5 regional facilities, more than any other region in the province. So the upset of all this is that in 2025, Region 9 taxpayers will pay a total of $4.7 million into the regional facilities, and almost 50% of that will go to TD Station. So in July, as we always do, the Regional Facilities Committee examined the budget requests for the 5 regional facilities for 2025, including TD Station. We did receive a number of inputs. We also received the viewpoint of taxpayers, and we concluded that taxpayers are at their limit without the extra $300,000 expense requested by TD Station, and so we made that recommendation. I should note that this allows TD Station to maintain the existing investment into the Sea Dogs operation, and I should say that contract negotiations for the Sea Dogs are strictly between the Sea Dogs and OVG 360 and Harbour Station Commission. At no time was the Service Commission involved in contract talks, and at no time have we asked the Sea Dogs to leave St. John. But there is a limit to what the taxpayers can bear and can invest, and I think that is the bottom line in the unanimous decision of the Regional Facilities Committee. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank you, Dr. Grant. Any further on the question? So you've heard the resolution. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those against? Motion carried. Now, Phil?
Yeah. So thank you for that, Director Grant and Chair of the Regional Facilities Committee. I will do a brief review of the report in open session on the budget. I did want to acknowledge that we have received a resolution from Director Merrifield, who will intend to submit this at the end of this presentation, but we felt it was still pertinent to kind of go through the budget document and what was submitted and to review it. Just so that everybody is on the exact same page, I will submit to you right now the new budget as prescribed by the resolution that was just adopted by this board, and this includes that addition of $100,000. So this is the most up to date in your packet. Yours is right here.
Oh, is it?
Thank you, sir.
And for Director McKenzie and Director Riddell, I submitted a report to you on Tuesday morning, I believe. If you look at that report, there is an attachment which I refer to as Scenario 6 of the budget, and that is exactly what I submitted to everybody. So just to make sure you keep it. The net increase on membership fees is $512,000. That should be the last page of membership summary. That should be what it reads. It's $100,000 more than what is included in the report that I'm reviewing right now. So we've completed the 45-day review period. Started on September 5th. We've gone through the process as prescribed by the board in the timeline and criteria in the development of the budget. We actually added a little bit more because some good feedback on getting the committees involved, which was not part of the initial process, but very well positioned to include them into the future. So happy that occurred as well. This budget is a little different than the last one you would have seen. The biggest changes that have occurred is there is a small decrease in the community development budget due to what we identified as duplication with investments completed by Envision St. John. So we removed that expenditure. We removed aerial photography, and we also removed the study, the 2025 study for aquatic center enhancement, and said that would be financed through reserve funds of each local government and rural district. So that brings us, with the addition of this $100,000, to a net increase of $512,549. I did want to briefly touch on some of the changes that occurred, most notably aerial photography. This one was probably the most challenging discussion for myself in the budget deliberations because some members wanted it, some members did not want it. The challenge that we had is if the FRSC was going to engage on this, it was going to deconstruct a prior partnership between 5 local governments. And this is something that the FRSC didn't want to become involved in. As we want to uphold collaboration, we don't want to divide it. So the decision was made to remove it. We would be obliged if members came to us and said we want it regardless. So if there was a variety of members that wanted it, we are obliged to provide that for our members. But in this particular case, it felt counter to the mandate of the FRSC to get into agreement with some members, but not all, who were going to do it separately. So very difficult discussion. Happy to receive more questions on this. The next one is something that was lost in the prior versions of this report. It was from a 2023 resolution on per bag tipping fee. We did do an analysis of that, and the outcome was that we did not need to increase that $1.50 tipping fee per bag. We increased it by some amount last year, and we wanted to come back and make sure that the board is aware that we've done that analysis. And at this stage, we do not see the need for a further increase, but we will continue to monitor this as we go on. Next is human resource considerations. This budget does integrate some assumptions on new human resource establishments for the organization, including a full-time chief financial officer to start by July of next year. The corresponding net cost on membership fees are identified there, as well as a full-time human resource manager to be hired on January 1st. The new contractual social mandate coordinator, which is a full-time term but is financed entirely through funding leverage from the province. And lastly is transition from a current contractual position to a full-time permanent position in the development officer role, which has no impact on membership fees because it's already integrated into our budget. In turn, we have completed a compensation review exercise and introducing a new salary grid, and those are integrated into the assumptions of this budget. So I have on pages 16 and 16 and 17 of the packet, you'll see some of the key findings from the 45-day review that we've summarized there. What I've done, instead of going through all of them, I've identified 8 themes that are the result of it, and I think these are what I believe is pertinent to share with the board in terms of what we're learning and what we're seeing. So one thing that I'm noticing, or we're noticing through the budget process, is there's 2 pressures coming to us. One pressure is, darn it, show me some value. Show me what you're doing to my local government. I want to know what that looks like. The second one is, don't spend any money. And those 2 conflict. If you look at our public safety budget, we do not have a lot to finance goods and services, studies. There's a big budget there, but they're primarily corporate costs, the percentage of my time, the percentage of someone else's time, the office, the enabling services. We don't have a robust budget on that. In fact, this year, we had no budget to pursue anything until we got funding from the province. That's the only way we unlocked the risk assessment this year. There would have been no projects this year done in there that would have had a price tag. So these 2 are a real challenge for this region, because some are saying, I want to see more value, which from the CEO standpoint, I'm going to tell you, staff can provide some value, but you're going to need some expenditure to animate and execute on what we want to do. So it's this balance. And I think back to our criteria as a budget, incrementality. We don't expect, and nobody's expecting the FRSC to be coming out with exuberant and clear outcomes on every single one of its mandates, because we're still investigating what they are and how to bring that value. So this is a challenge that I think you're going to see continuous, and it's going to increase with time. The next one is this idea about 3 particular portfolios: regional transportation, public safety, and community development. These are relatively small budgets from our overall budget. They account for 5.2% of our overall $22 million budget. However, I would say it accounts for probably around 60 to 70% of discussion points when I'm talking about the budget. These 3 new mandated services really matter. I'm not trying to say it to diminish it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that 5.2% of our budget is eliciting a lot of interest. People are interested in these. What are you doing? What could you do? What could you do better? This is an interesting facet for me, because this is a pretty low-lying priority when you look at the overall budget. But it is where people are looking for value. The other thing is, when I looked into these particular 3 mandates and departments, I indicated that they represent 5.2% of our overall budget. But in terms of the cost simply to deliver the service and goods and services, so not Phil's time, not the cost of the office, not the proportional cost of communications, not the cost for IT support, all that stuff aside, just like funding for things we're going to do next year, it accounts for about $200,000. Okay? Half of that is paid for by RSSF. So these 3 budgets account for a net increase on these goods and services of about $100,000 of a $22 million budget. That's 0.45% of our budget. So it's an interesting point, because I've talked at length through this budget process about these 3 portfolios, and for 0.45% of our budget, this is eliciting a lot of interest. And I think it means that we should actually look at what is the investment level that is required, because I'm still approaching this at a minimal level, at an incremental level. This is not meant to be exuberant. So perhaps the conversation is not just, are we spending too much, but are we spending too little if people are looking for value? So I would invite that as a discussion of the board in the future on how we go about that. The next is regional facilities. At the council level, hands down, regional facilities is the discussion point. This remains a hot topic, one that, while this board has wrapped their heads around it, the councils have not. They still see this as an unfair scenario. They do not necessarily see the value of that investment into those regional facilities. They have a hard time grasping it, and it's almost like, we have no control. So just let it be. It's a forced, and people are giving up on the value side. So I don't think this conversation is over, is what I'm saying to this board. I think if I were to judge the interests of the council, a lot more effort is needed in this space. I've placed as a resolution in this, and I'll read them at the end, that we submit a letter and reinvigorate, especially with a change of government, this unique scenario that we're in as the Fundy region, that we have 5 mandated regional facilities, which cost approximately almost $5 million a year on our members, that no other RSC in the province has. And I think that has to be part of our DNA to continue to push, to advocate for the interest of this board and also your councils. That's what I've heard pretty clearly through this exercise. The other part, which is going to be a staff role, but we need to be the best at finding the highest impact initiatives. We have ideas of what they could be. We have a regional strategy. We have a work plan. But I think now it's becoming more and more clear we need to pick winners. And it's going to be hard. I'll give you the example of aerial photography. That was presented as a winner by CAOs, not by me. This was brought forward by CAOs to the FRSC. And I thought it was a winner. And right until this budget process, I thought it was, and then it's now no longer part of the budget. So I spent a lot of time on this. CAO spent a lot of time on this. The organization spent a lot of time on this. And sorry, I don't have anything to show for it. And that is part of our reality. I thought that was a winner. And I thought I was going to come to this budget and everybody's going to be like, you did it, you found a good, cool way of giving us value. It didn't happen. So it matters, right? If you look for those who are receiving the service for a regional enforcement, same thing, huge amount of work. 3 members are receiving it directly. We're kind of placing a pause on the rural district right now. And for those who are receiving it, pretty good. But that took a year of work to get to that stage. And it does not impact all members equally. It impacts 3 disproportionately way more. Luckily for us, that was financed by the province. But what I'm getting to is we've got to find ideas that are going to be winners. And we got to be eyes wide open when we set those work plans and those strategies to say, this is the best. This is the best option we have. Not, this won't work for us. This is not good enough. We have to stop talking about what's not working and find out what can work. That's what we need to change, and I need this board's help in enticing your own staff and your own teams to move that to why it's so hard to collaborate, to here are ideas that could work. Next one is building ownership early. One of the lessons learned I had is that we need to build more connection with the committees. I would say not just with CAOs, but with staff. That's the next point. I'll add these 2 together, is that if you introduce an initiative or a program or a research, it might be well-intentioned, but if you don't get the fingerprints of all those that are going to be impacted by it early on, you can get opposition pretty quick. And we've been relying on CAOs as the primary focus point on that, but CAOs have engineers, they have transportation consultants, they have planners, they have a whole bunch of skill sets that aren't engaged early on, and we're finding that those groups tend to veer off and they're not building that ownership earlier on. So we have some work to do to build that ownership, the committee level as well, in finding what we're doing and how we're doing it, and it aligns with their objectives. There's 2 other ones that I wanted to make a point of. One is on the KPIs. This is an initiative in the 2024 work plan that we have not been able to get to. It is an interesting one, especially in the propriety of the resolution that Director Merrifield is going to discuss on the regional strategy. You know, getting into KPIs while talking about changing the regional strategy is like what should come first. I still think we need KPIs regardless, and we could elaborate on them, but it's still something I hope we initiate this year to start this process of establishing KPIs, because this will help us with joint communication on what's working and whether it's pushing towards those KPIs that we've all established. Lastly, the thing that is probably the most exciting about the budget process so far has been the summit. We organized the summit as a communications tool. We thought that we needed more direct communication with the council members of each one of our members. But since going through the budget process, we've discovered that this summit is going to be much more important than that. One, the provincial election, and hopefully an opportunity to connect with incoming MLAs as well as ministers. But more importantly, to reboot where we are with our direction, where we are with our strategy. And we're really formulating that summit now to collect that feedback and inform the committees, inform the board on what adjustments are needed to make that regional strategy more conducive, more responsive to the current needs. So that's something that I look forward to. It's on the 28th. We're going to get a presentation today from Neil on that. 2 other things I wanted to review before wrapping this up is there's a clarification on a vote. I did mention in a prior report that there'd be specific resolutions for 2 of the members. Upon review, we are not going to do that because we're not going to be releasing those reserves right away. So it will be just a full board vote if the budget is to proceed instead of allocating specifically to some members. The report finishes with the impact of the 2025 FRSC budget, which is ultimately, I believe, at the policy and the vision level of this board. And this budget provides for additional capacity for standing committees. It improves and helps in our direction towards the 2029 Canada Game planning. It allows an introduction, a foray into the social mandate and our involvement in it. It responds to the actions of the regional strategy around climate planning and transportation planning and regional risk and rail traffic and safety. It will finance an additional regional summit in 2025. It will provide new efforts towards the solid waste service that are outlined in the budget document. And it will continue our partnership and rigor in the delivery of regional facilities and economic development and tourism promotion. The resolutions that are in this recommendation include an approval of what we're calling version 6 of the budget. And it is a weighted vote, so if we do end up doing a vote today, it is a 2/3 majority vote with at least 51% of the total population of members present. Approve the standard operating procedures of the salary grid, and direct CEO to uphold the expectations. There is a item also to approve a letter to be submitted immediately to the Minister of Local Government upon their appointment on a variety of items identified through the planning process, the budget planning process. And then lastly, since this budget does alter our submission on the Regional Services Support Fund, Jim Bedford, as the chair, would be granted the authority to submit an adjusted version of that report, or that application. With that, I will open up the floor for questions and feedback and alternative resolutions.
So I guess we'll ask for a resolution to proceed with the budget as presented.
So may I make an amendment to that resolution?
Absolutely.
And then if I get support as a second, then I'd like to speak to that resolution. So my resolution that I circulated yesterday was that the Board of the Fundy Regional Service Commission approve that portion of the budget including solid waste, electrical generation, regional tourism, economic development, regional sport, recreation, and culture infrastructure and local planning. 2, table that portion of the budget until November 21st, 2024, pending demonstration of the tangible outcomes to be achieved in fiscal year 2025, including cooperative and regional planning service, community development, regional transportation, and regional public safety. 3, that the strategic plan completed in 2023 be reviewed by the board, CAOs, and committees to determine its relevancy, effectiveness, and regional needs before June 15th, 2025 to ensure the alignment of the budget and strategic plan with regional needs. And 4, that the committees be consulted and engaged in the development of their respective budgets for 2026.
Okay, you've heard the amendment. We'll
Seconder.
I need a seconder.
seconder for that? Seconder?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Director
Do I
Doucet?
have your permission to speak on my motion?
Absolutely.
Thanks. So yesterday I sent around that proposed modification to the motion to approve the budget for 2025, and I didn't send it lightly. I've been struggling with that particular portion of the budget for a while. To be clear, the first portion of the budget I have no issues with. It's basically the one surrounding the new mandates. The services previously offered absolutely should be approved. I'm just proposing we take a step back on the new mandates for the very short term and make sure that we are truly offering value for money. And I know that it's just a small percentage of the overall budget, but it still comprises $1.2 million. Okay, so every dollar matters these days. I've sent questions through my CAO. I've addressed these questions in committee, and I'm still not overly comfortable with where we are. At the end of the day, what we are doing needs to bring demonstrable value to the people that we serve. So we're in an affordability crisis. Every penny that our taxpayers send to us, and that's who's paying the bill, is taken away from something else. So if I need to make sure that what we are doing is making the lives better of the people that we serve, and I need those assurances. So I'm struggling with the demonstration of that real intangible value. And additionally, as you see in my motion, there's some governance and procedural process issues that I think that we can improve for the next budget cycle. So while it's important that we move forward with this budget, I think that we need to resolve some of these issues prior to improving the entire budget. So when I look at the budget for regional transportation, which is, I'm the chair of that committee as an example, I see that we allocated 221K last year, and we're proposing 370K for 2025. So this is a variance of 40, and of that 370K, 42% is corporate costs. The budgets for the other mandates show in similar increases and percentages. Community development is over 600K. We need to be able to clearly demonstrate what we are doing and how this is going to make our community stronger. Right now, I can't go up to a resident and say, this is how this money that we are investing is going to make your life better. I need to be able to do that. Now, I understand that we're building a foundation and that we have to walk before we can run. I completely get that, but we're now going into year 3. I think that we need to have a better and a stronger value proposition in terms of what we are delivering in a tangible way. You know, so what can I tell the people of Greater St. John that they are getting for the almost 400K in regional transportation as an example that's going to make their lives better? And I know that some of the revenue in this budget is coming from the RSSF, but this is not guaranteed revenue. This is project-based. It's also revenue that must be matched by our members. And it's restricted in use. So one of the fears that I have is that I understand we need data to make evidence-based decisions so that we're not doing things arbitrarily or anecdotally, but I'm worried that we're in danger of having a library full of studies and no money to be able to implement them. And that sort of, Phil, goes back to your comment earlier on, are we investing enough? So I think that's a really valid question to have asked. Staff capacity is critical for growth, we all know that. But I'm concerned about the corporate costs. And I'm still not really clear on the methodology that's been used on how they have been allocated to the different mandates. So I look forward to more clarity in that regard. I've talked about the process, I've talked about it in committee, and I've talked about it to Phil. And I think there are things that we can do to improve this process and to make it better, from reviewing our regional strategy annually. And we all know that we were under the gun to get that regional strategy done. We asked for extra time, and we were not granted that by the provincial government. But that doesn't mean that we now can't review that annually and make sure that we are still steering the ship in the right direction based on our experience and based on the feedback of our members and our councils and our committees. So, and we also really need to build the budget better in the sense that we need to make sure our committees are engaged more meaningfully during the process. I really think that's critical. As chair of the Regional Transportation Committee, I just saw a budget in the budget line. I was not involved in the build of that number at all, and I wasn't sure what it comprised of. So I think there are things that we can do better now that we know, and we can move forward to do that for budget 2026. So I want to advance the work we're doing at the FRSC. I think it's important, I think it's critical, and I want to thank our CEO, Phil, and I want to thank all of our CEOs. There has been a ton of work that has gone into this budget development process so far. And I really want to shine a light on the work that was done, the collaboration that I've seen through this whole process, and thank everybody involved because we're getting to a better place. But I think the responsible thing to do is table that portion of the budget pending that demonstration of those tangible outcomes to be achieved in fiscal 2025. So when I see someone on the street, I can tell them what they're getting for their money. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I'll provide some initial response and then look forward to others. Just a couple things, food for thought on this. First, just on the propriety of the motion. I checked into this. We can't partially approve a budget. So what I see as options ahead of us are the following. You can deny the budget. You could vote down the budget. You can approve the budget. You could table the budget. If there's an amendment on the fly, I will, as the CEO, recommend to the chair that it not be voted on and we table it, because we shouldn't be making amendments on the fly, right? So that would be my advice, and I'd hope that you would follow. And I know that you probably experience the same thing at your own councils, and you'd probably find it the same agreement. So I think that's what we have ahead of us. The resolution of approving some but not others, I don't think that's appropriate. It's deny, approve, table, or amend. I connected with the province this morning on timelines. So there is a legislative requirement for us to submit a budget by November 1st. So what's the requirement, quote unquote requirement? They placed that in, and I asked them, what is that? Why do you have that? They place that in because they require local governments to submit their budgets by November 15th. And as you know, you don't always achieve that timeline.
We are required to submit our budgets 30 days after the release of the tax base, which still has not happened and will not happen until at least cabinet is struck. So there is some time there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I'm not, listen, I'm going to be fully honest. I'm not going to try to build fear out of this. They will not act. I don't think the province will act on this, but it does grant them, and we have seen this in other RCs, is what I wanted to make the point. What it would look like is probably a notice that we're being monitored by the minister. That's what they've done with others when they fail. I think the spirit of this, that we're moving towards approval, so I don't see that as a major issue, but I wanted you to make sure that if you think that we have a requirement, it's not a hard requirement for this November 1st. In terms of strategy, and this is a point that I think is important from the feedback that Director Merrifield provided. As staff of the FRSC, we can only be directed by what council, what the board has given us as vision. Whether there's problems with it today or not, that is the regional strategy. So for me, that is my guide. If you don't like it, we got to change it. But for this budget process and the assumptions embedded in this budget, I couldn't have said, you know, I didn't ever like that section, so I'm just going to not do it. You guys would then come back to me and say, shame on you, you didn't follow our direction. So for me, I established direction by approval and resolution of the board. The regional strategy is truth to me right now and should be truth to all of you until we find a reason to change it. I'm not disagreeing with Director Merrifield. There's changes to be had related to that strategy. But in the lead up and development of this budget, I have to use it as my guide. The other thing that I have to use as my guide is the budget development criteria that was approved by this board. It was approved very early on this year. It was mimicked after the last year's one, and that was approved, and it did not include committees. What's awesome is that it was brought up during the process that committees should be involved, and it makes good sense that they should. So I fully agree, and I think in the future years we'll see that integration and how we develop our budget and the criteria we use. In terms of tangibility, and this is a big question that we're facing, as CEO, I come to you each year and I develop a work plan. This year's work plan has 71 action items. Everybody around this table should have eyes wide open that they agreed to those 71 action items. I shared it with you, and at the time, we thought they were the winners. We thought it was the best thing, and it tied to the regional strategy. And that's what I'm doing. I go to my staff, and you can ask them, that's what I'm driving. Where are you on this? We have regular meetings to make sure we deliver that. And we will do the same thing when we adopt our next work plan. For all of you, I would be very surprised if one of you local governments tell me that you already have your work plan established for 2025. I know how the local government process works. If you have, kudos to you. It's not my experience. You apply and develop a budget with broad-based ideas of what you will achieve, some milestones, some bookends, okay? You are not developing a work plan in the year before your approval of your budget. You get your budget approved with those assumptions, mainly driven by your strategic plan, and then you develop your work plan. St. John had a history of approving their work plan in March or April. That's not best practice, but that's usually when it does. I'd be interested when you have it. So, for me to have a full work plan established, that was never asked of me. The current process is that we do that at the start of the year after budget approval. The last 2 years have been around January to March. That's the timeline. And so I do not have a work plan. And I'm not I'm not saying that we've done something wrong with that, but that's just the process we have. What we have done as a response to the feedback we received is clarity on what those investments we intend to have. So this document is part of your package, and we wanted to clarify what those increases are. I'm happy today to go through those. I think there's a story to be told. The story that people do not like to hear is that these increasing costs are not just around new initiatives, they're around escalating corporate costs in general. Allocations of more people's time towards a portfolio, the new office, enabling services, legal costs, communications, IT, all these costs culminate, and we have to divide it across all our departments. So, like when you look at public safety, you see an increase in public safety. I checked with our finance team. In public safety, there's $30,000, new $30,000 for the rail working group next year, because we know it's going to be active. We want to give them a fighting chance to do something with that. So a study, a report, a review, but give them a mandate with that. There's another $25,000 to continue the support of the regional risk assessment, which is part of the regional strategy. So of that increase of public safety, of goods and services, there's $55,000 that are attributed to that. 50% of that is going to be paid for by Regional Services Support Fund. So almost each one of them will have a story similar to that, that cover that. In terms of the tangibility and Director Merrifield's request that, if we had another month, I don't think we would be elaborating on these that much, because they are future state initiatives. I don't know what the real working group will ask for, and for me to define it at this time would be speculation. But I do know that a new committee starting needs some funds to get themselves started. So that's the investment that we thought was appropriate. You could disagree. That's definitely fine. But no, listen. I think that's my key points. We're directed by the regional strategy. This budget has accomplished its 45-day review. We have adapted significantly, and at least from my standpoint, I think the budget is ready for vote to deny or approve. And I also want to remind you, with all that tough talk, we're administrators to this board. We will make this work. Whatever this body wants, and I think we've proven that, we will make this work. So I've given you my guidance and feedback, but ultimately we will make whatever this body wants work.
Okay. So just for clarity for me, Phil, I guess we're not allowed to make amendments to a budget. We basically have three choices. We can either approve it, deny it, or table it.
Correct. I think those are the options ahead. There may be disagreement on the table, but I don't think we should be proposing amendments on the fly today. It's unfair to all of you. You haven't seen the information and discussed it with your own CAOs and councils or whomever else you would get advice from.
Okay.
So just
Yes.
follow up, if I may.
Director,
So my uncomfortability comes with, like my own committee, $370,000 for regional transportation. 155,000 of that is for corporate costs, and 215 are for direct costs, for an increase of, I guess the corporate cost, is like, again, that's 42%. I am still not at a place where I know where we're going to be investing that money. Community development, we're at over 600 grand for community development, and 300 of that is for corporate costs. These are important questions that we need to be able to answer in plain, clear language, and understand clearly how we're investing that money. So, and I still don't have that assurance. So I'm not comfortable.
If I may, and maybe this is a good exercise now, let's go through regional transportation as an example, and I have the finance team here who will give you more input. We have a net increase for regional transportation of $77,000. The primary drivers of that increase are $60,000, which will be contributing towards our application for leverage funding for the Canada Public Transit Fund, the interregional stream, which I mentioned earlier in my CEO update. We will be trying to access an additional 40% from RDC on that, so we will also use those funds to leverage it. So that's a $60,000 goods and services investment for that. This stems from the existing feedback that has been done, or research that's been done by UNB St. John, and the identification that there is an interest and potential for rural transit across the region, and utilizing St. John as the hub and expanding upon that. So that's 60,000. The next cost that we have is the salary of the community planning and regional transportation director. Each employee is allocated a percentage of time to each one. So we have not shared that level of data. If the board wants to see that level, we can certainly do it. The methodology we have to do that is that every year we come together and we start the year with a determination of what we believe our percentage of time should be for each allocated service. At the end of the year, we evaluate that, and then that informs our next year's budget. So for example, my time, if you guys could guess, where is it the most focused on? Well, regional facilities is a big one. You'd see a lot of my salary being allocated to regional facilities. It takes a lot of time, and there's no other primary staff lead to that committee. So I would have quite a bit of time there. Planning and building, very little. It's self-sufficient. I don't need to be involved in that. Landfill, same thing. My amount of investment into there is less. So for this case, last year in 2020, or this year, 2024, we had nobody assigned to regional transportation directly in the budget. It was not identified. And we discovered that there was a problem with that. This year, we're discovering that that's not the case. And a big portion of our director's time is going to be to that. So it's a brand new expense. It's a big portion of his salary that's now being attributed to that. That should be seen as, well, what's the outcome? It's not an outcome yet. It's concerted effort. It's concerted focus. That's what you're going to get. My biggest priority when I started is I need leads for each one of these committees. If you recall when I first started, for those who have a longer history, I was it. Cassie and I went to every meeting and we were like, we're going to try to make this work. I'm the lead for this and this and this and this and this. And people were like, you're not going to survive. And I said, I know. So that was the vision. And now what we're seeing is we're allocating the leads to different people and they're taking it on. So that would be a major expense as part of that. A big portion of his salary is now attributed entirely to that. It's not a new expense because we already approved the expense, but now it's being allocated to it. Is there anything else that Ashley and Mark, you'd share, maybe on the corporate cost, the proportional corporate cost, anything else that you could share on determining what that is?
I would just like to add, like, out of the total $370,000 budget, there's $50,000 in there for urban rural rides, which is funded 100% through ESIC. So it doesn't cost the members anything for that, but it shows in our budget because it's an expense and a revenue.
That would be under community development, not regional transportation.
They place it in the...
Could be.
Yeah, so that's,
It's like anything.
so that's
It's
not
under
part
a
of that
whole bunch of
budget at all.
different places.
It's not part of that budget line at all.
It's basically in and out, so.
Yeah. So I guess we really just need to remember who's paying the bills. And we need to remain focused on providing value, and not just providing value, because, you know, the studies are important, the staff support is important, but demonstrating that value. You know, so if the people around this table aren't 100% clear on that, we need to do better at making sure that we all understand that so that we can be the cheerleaders for the work we're doing around here. And I think that's very, very important. So I've talked enough. I don't know if there's anybody else that wants to...
Do we have any other comments?
Just one
Director
that,
O'Hara?
and I agree with much of what Mayor Merrifield says. However, I do think that the proper procedure would be to go through process and procedure in the coming year to outline what it is that the communities want, what we want to see, and if there's a, you know, an ability to say, this is what Envision has done for each of you, for Granby Westfield, for Quispam, Hampton, Ross, St. John, whatever, to see that. Because to look from a larger scope to say, you know, and we all agree that St. John is the nucleus and does tend to have, you know, the focus there, but what is each community receiving as well? So those things are, I believe, are procedural that could be hammered out as we move forward. So over the past couple of years, we've been developing this organization, and now we've got to get down to the gritty part of it and say, this is what we are accomplishing for our communities. And then we go back to our tax-paying residents and have something tangible to show them. But I don't think this is the time that we can look at that. I think we've got to move beyond that with this budget and look into, when we get to 2025, start looking at these things.
Okay. Director McKenzie?
Thank you, Jen. I guess from my perspective, I'm looking at it as in a couple of ways. One, we got a brand new majority government that we haven't had this conversation with, and I think it's worth having that conversation, because I know in St. John and I know in all the communities, you don't say, well, we're going to pave this road in 2025. If we can get the funding, you have to know that you're going to be supported in order to do things. And I think that going through the whole planning stage, get the data, find the gaps and all this stuff, and then finding if the government says, you know what, we're not even going to support all that stuff, is sort of backwards. So, I mean, if we don't even have our numbers yet, that point was already made, and I'm thinking if we tabled this for a month, had a conversation with the new leader of the Liberal Party and a few other people, we could come to an understanding that, look, we're going to be able to go forward, and we've got support here, and nobody's wasting their time. Because I wouldn't want to sit down at our council table, go through the whole budget process, and then find out that, we can't do any of this, or there's no support for this. So that's, that's one point. The other thing is too, I mean, I couldn't hear everything that you were saying, Phil, so I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the points that Mayor Marshall made are good points, and you actually explained some of it here today, but you had to do that because there was no explanation prior to today, which was the point being made. And I think that, if we were to table this to the next meeting, that would give an opportunity for everybody around the table to get a one-pager, maybe, ask the questions that are burning, and get a clearer understanding. Plus, have that conversation with the government. I don't know if this is like what the rules are in terms of, amending the budget and all that stuff. But I mean, if you can't do that, but you can table it. Because I mean, I don't want to torpedo this budget. I think it's great. You guys did a lot of work. But at the same time, these are legitimate concerns. And we do have the time to have a conversation or two and answer some more questions. I don't think it has to be run through right away. That's just my comment on it.
If I may. Thanks for the feedback, Director McKenzie. I think to the defense of the process, we did reciprocate on questions related to that. Perhaps it was not to the detail that was warranted. Maybe that's what I'm maybe discovering, is like we really wanted to get into that nitty gritty. I never received that level of feedback to say, no, I want the next level of it. If you know me, Director McKenzie, or anybody on the board, I would have been happy to write you a long email and submit it into the package. I did submit some documents for it. This could be easily resolved today in providing you that detail for each one of the new mandated services of concern. I have provided verbal updates generally, but listen, I didn't go through Graham's percentage of time on public safety is 65%, and therefore 65% of his salary is attributed to it. I haven't done that, nor do I think people want that level of detail. So we've kept it high level, generally speaking, before getting into that, to get people out of the weeds and keep it at the policy level. But listen, today I am fully prepared to do that. I don't necessarily see the value of a month of doing this. CAOs have had 2 different meetings to ask their questions. I've provided them more detail than the board. They've asked of it, and I'm happy to do that with them as well. But what you won't get is that I do not have a full work plan. So if you're looking for a full work plan, I have not prepared that. So that's something that will always be lacking, and I will not be able to determine that in the next month. So we could take 10 minutes today and I could go through each one of those services. I've broken it down last night when I couldn't sleep, and I've broken it out. And you could determine if that's sufficient information or if you're still looking for more. But it's to the will of this body. I think there's still an opportunity to adopt this budget today, but that's just me. I'm not a voting member.
Dr. Grant?
I certainly agree that we're all looking for value for our communities. I think St. John has certainly received value through the regional facilities, if nothing else. The surrounding communities, it's far less clear. I had these thoughts myself on the weekend, and Monday morning I asked our CAO, what value can you show me that Rothsay is receiving? And we came up empty. So I certainly agree, going forward, the approach that's been outlined is indicated. Totally, I agree. But I don't think that we should hold up this budget. Councils are now preparing their budgets as best they can without the assessment information, but depending on the external inputs to come in. And I don't think anything different is going to happen in 3 weeks or a month. So I guess that's just my opinion.
Director Merrifield?
Thank you. So I'm listening to the comments around the table, and I'm hearing a lot of agreement with what I'm saying, but uncomfortability with the fact that, well, now that we know that we can't split the budget up, nobody around the table wants to delay the budget. I would be willing to amend my motion, removing that number 2 where it says table that portion of the budget where I outlined those 4 services, pending, with Phil's offer of sending us the additional information, including, I know that some of those budget allocations will speak to the tangible value that we should be getting as communities in 2025. But I would like to leave the rest of the motion as it stands. I guess it would be approve the budget, but also include number 3 and number 4 with respect to the process.
Okay, so you've heard the motion?
But my seconder needs to agree with my amendment to my motion.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
I'd like to hear the motion
Yep.
in its entirety, please.
Here,
Director Merrifield, may I propose something?
Yes, please.
Because if you're going to approve the budget, you'll have to use the resolution within the other. So I think what you look to do is you tack on to the existing resolutions provided in the report.
Okay.
So you'd say, work with the community on that statement around regional strategy. You'd say, I want this added as an added component or conditionality, and then you can add another one, which is like, I'd like to see this in next month, a more detailed breakdown. But you put it as part of the broader package.
So procedurally, what I would do is withdraw my initial motion with the agreement of my seconder.
Yeah.
And then amend the motion that's in the package?
I think that's what I'd like to do. I could go through it with you, and we might just take a caucus, and I could draft out the conditions you have to it, because there's some that require timelines and others that are not. Those resolutions will not be a weighted vote. They'll be like, go do it.
Right.
We're mandating Phil to come
Okay,
back.
so can we just take a few minutes and draw up the resolution before we...
So you need to throw a chaos grenade into the middle of everything.
On the question, could we not simply approve the budget as is and then make another motion with your,
I think that's what Phil is proposing.
but 2 different budgets, not having all these attachments? That really complicates and.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what Phil is suggesting.
Okay.
Yeah. Because one requires a weighted vote and the other ones don't.
Okay, so you've heard, we're going to stick with the original resolution on the budget to approve the budget. So those in favor?
Mr. Chair, I would like another comment, please. An unrelated issue.
You got Ray too.
Just 1 second, Dre. We've got Director Grant. Director Grant? We'll be back on the original motion. Director Grant has the floor.
I just want to raise another issue, and certainly, I'm in support of the budget with the comments that have been made for going forward. But there's one caution I want to raise, and it's related to the precedent that's in this budget of developing an economical fund from the landfill budget for the host community for the landfill. I have no problem with providing economic assistance to the host community. I have no problem with the amount. My problem is that we are setting a precedent here by creating an economic development fund from the Service Commission budget when we are already contracting at great cost another agency to do economic development for us. And I think that is not only a precedent, but the edge of a very slippery slope. It won't stop me from approving the budget, but I think this is something we need to seriously consider and use caution.
Okay.
May I speak on this?
Yes, go ahead, Ray, please. Go ahead.
I want to thank Phil, first of all, for coming out and presenting it to an audience in the Sunday Rural District in excess of 260 people who were not really happy with the budget, with the services they're getting, and the benefits they're not getting, which the costs they are being subjected to. And I think, going through, there's been a number of budgets. This is number 6, and I want to thank Phil again for all the work he's been doing on that. On the human resource considerations, I think there was a general feeling that we're growing like topsy, that we are being subsidized for some of these expanded positions, but that subsidy is going to run out. And I did ask Kevin for a 5-year projection. I've never received that yet, but that was certainly a concern. One of the things that you recommended on your feedback was accessing information from regional facilities on government rural district usage. And that, I think, the Regional Facilities Committee said if that's available. I think it should be available, and each of those regional facilities should be able to provide usage information so that we can assess the benefit to each of our communities. There was a resolution passed last year, and it was moved by the mayor from Hampton that some investigation should be done on distance from these regional facilities, and some distance formula should come up, and that the terms of the committee should be reviewed. That's never been done, and it's not in the work plan. It should be done. You point out it's challenging to approve expenditures on mandates that are not yet fully defined. I've been asking for years since amalgamation for the minimum requirements, and I have not ever received any of the minimum requirements, so I don't know what we're trying to build, but I know it's getting bigger and bigger, and I appreciate your efforts to build something and provide that value, but we don't have that tangible value you're talking about out in the rural district. You talk about the importance of FRSC to rebuild the relationship with the host community of Crane Mountain, and you're getting recommendations from Mark to be aggressive. And I echo Mayor Grant's concern about developing a new economic development themed grant, which seems to me to be spite for CMEI's action, but it also creates a second group that is going to involve Envision and going to involve presumably some of our staff to take away from what they basically should be doing.
Crane Mountain is doing an adequate job, and we should be very, very careful about doing that. I recognize your incrementality, and I think we're, I'm feeling like the frog in the warm water that's getting hotter and hotter as we go on this budget from 9 to 13 and beyond. I also wonder about optimizing your geography and trying to bring more people into the funded region. I think that should be approached with great caution. You're concerned about balancing affordability and value, and our people see in the rural districts see no benefit, just increased costs. As far as regional transportation, public safety, you addressed that, but we've seen what's happened up north with other service commissions receiving millions of dollars from the Rural Transit Solutions Fund, and we're a bit slow to get off the ground, and I haven't seen any reports on that, but I appreciate you're going to bring me up to date at some point. Number 5 on page 18, you talk about the FRSC is not in the business of solely fulfilling the expectations of GMB-defined mandates. And with the greatest respect, I disagree. We are a creature of statute. We are given mandates, and we can't go cherry pick and pick out items that we'd like to deal with and spend money on. We are confined. We're confined and restricted to dealing with those mandates. And a good example is your initiative to look after expansion of pro kids, which is not asked for by the 2 communities you are looking to expand into without the knowledge of the pro kids board of directors. And it's a burden on our staff, and it's something that you thought was a good idea, but it's not within the GMB defined mandates that constrain our actions. So, in closing, I still need clarification on the 2 resolutions dealing with building inspection and the purchase of a motor vehicle for the building inspector. I understood it would be a vote that was limited to Sheriff Bedford and myself on both of those. And in order to become informed, I asked for a breakdown analysis of lease, of insurance, on maintenance, on cost, and all I've received so far is that we, the Service Commission, pay $16,000 for mileage for our building inspector, which will be severely reduced. That does not answer the question of what is the cost. In any event, are you now saying that those 2 votes are now going to be open to the board and not just Mayor Bedford and myself? And I think that's the whole point that I made.
Did you want to address
Yeah,
that?
if I may. Yes, right, Director Riddell, that is what I'm insinuating, that the vote is now of the board for the release of those funds, and that will grant staff the ability to execute and to proceed with it. It's not something we're prepared to proceed with immediately, so we can't release the reserves right now. So we've integrated it into the budget vote to proceed with it. The added complication is that the capital budget for this vehicle was primarily financed by a large LSD at the time, who would have been a big payer, which is Musquash. And it would have included segments of other geographies within our region, which are now part of others. So Grand Bay has a section that was paying for it. So it's not clear that it was just the 2 existing members of the service being provided. So for that vehicle purchase, I don't think it would pass the test that it is because it was established in late 2018 or 2019. So It's not the same type. So we're going to place it into the budget. That's what that resolution indicated, and I apologize for the confusion because it was in an earlier version that I indicated that those votes were there. So I do apologize, Director Riddell. I want to make just 2 quick points. One is on this point of value, and we need to help each other on this because it's not easy. I'll just give you an example. We're doing regional climate planning. We have ideas on what those opportunities might be, but they're not yet there. We're still at the study stage. When we talk about rural transit, we're viewing whether there's a business case for it. So I've heard this comment, like, I want my citizens to know what's the value. At this stage, we're opening doors to determine what that value is. And I'd love to be able to say, we're launching a rural transit solution program and these buses are going all over and your citizens are all going to benefit. That's going to take a while. I can't say that yet. We're investigating the opportunity towards it. I could also go into programming and say, well, I'm going to deliver a new program. But then I'm probably going to be stepping on your toes. So this is the crux, is we're still in that investigative stage and about picking winners of what will yield those outcomes. So a lot of these, the outcome is not yet defined on what it is. It's still at that investigative stage. So I don't think you're going to hear me ever not talk about studies. Studies will continue to be a primary driver for us to find. We had one last year on collections, if you recall. Outcome, it cost us $100,000. Outcome, not worth it. Keep doing what you're doing. That's the best business case for your local governments. Is that a failure? I don't know. We looked at it. We thought there was enough interest there. We budgeted for it. Eyes wide open. Didn't go through. So I think you're going to see some doors close on us. But let's try to pick those winners. The other piece that Director Riddell said, I think it's very important, is yes, we need to accomplish the minimum requirements of GNB, or what GNB expects of us, of our mandates. But it's also about what you want. And if this group says, I want to start doing joint procurement, and that's not part of our mandate, but you really want it, I think that's the platform to discuss it. So that's how I'm approaching it. I'm hearing that there's ideas that are generating not just in these narrow mandates. So I think we have a lot more discussion. I think the regional strategy would be a good one for that.
Okay. All right, so I will ask.
On the question, Jim?
Yeah.
Oh, John.
Director McKenzie?
So just for clarification, because there's been some times talking here different things, we're at a point now where we're going to vote on the budget as presented, and then we're going to have a motion presented by Director Merrifield that's going to address 3 and 4 of her original motion, correct?
That is correct. And we're going to be voting on version number 6 of the budget.
Okay.
Mr. McLeod.
Mark?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Just for clarification purposes, because the comment was quite personal, and I just want to and I thank you for it being discussed as to where the Economic Development Fund came from. And Mayor Grant brought it up, and it was very clear, and then it was followed up by a comment by Director Riddell with regards to being spiteful. This is under section N of it's the Order of Council 205112, and that we have the option, it's not stipulated in the Order of Council, it's for us to determine. And we had the option to provide, even though we were a regional solid waste commission at the time, and now we're a regional service commission, we can provide under section N2, provide off-site amenities and gain funding for initiatives in the host community to enhance community-based activities, projects, programs, or facilities, and then the host community being defined. So it's very localized, and I just want to reiterate that the plan right now, but we can change it because again, whatever you guys give direction to, that was the crux of it, is that we had the sustainability triangle, we had the social factor in it under the CMEI program, we had the environmental factor on it on the CMEI program, and what we heard during the EIA process is we're getting all these financial benefits and no one else was. So we threw in the financial portion of the sustainability triangle as well. Under the guise of N2, under Order of Council 205, 112 Ray for you. And so there was no spiteful action taken whatsoever. This was just a consideration of our flexibility that we can use under the Act and the accompanying statute. And then, of course, the Order of Councils. And that's all it came from. There was no spiteful move on it, and it is localized to the host community. And our intention is to only use Envision, maybe one of the Envision staff to help us through some economic development expertise and determining how we would assess these future projects. So I just wanted to be clear on that. And I will say that this was brought forward also after the fact to me, but primarily from one of the host community members. So I think it's unfair to suggest that this was us being spiteful.
Okay. Okay, so any other comments before we go to vote? Okay, so
Chair, actually, may I just clarify that the first and the seconder for the budget vote were Director Merrifield and Director Doucette, with the amendment coming immediately after. Correct?
I think they're gonna
But that-
reject.
we withdrew that one,
Yeah.
and so we'll need a new mover and seconder for.
Perfect.
Yeah, so we don't actually have a motion on the table.
okay, so could I have a motion on the table to approve version number 6 of the 2025 budget? Seconder?
I'll second.
On the question? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Motion carried. So the next item we want to make,
What I might do, I don't think there'll be any opposition to these, if I'm not mistaken. I can read very quickly the 6 resolutions that would be a simple majority vote. So the 3 other ones in the report on page 12 of the packet would be read. Approve the standard operating procedure and salary grid of the FRSC management and trade employees. I won't go on. Next is direct the FRSC to draft a letter to the Minister of Local Government. I won't read on. Authorize Chair Jim Bedford to resubmit and finalize the RSSF investment plan. I won't read on. Then the resolutions as per the submitted feedback from Director Merrifield, that the strategic plan completed in 2023 be reviewed by the board, CAOs, and committees to determine its relevancy, effectiveness, and regional needs before June 15th, 2025 to ensure the alignment of the budget and strategic plan with the regional needs. The 5th resolution, that the committee be consulted and engaged, that committees be consulted and engaged in the development of their respective budgets for budget 2026, and I'll maybe add in future budgets. And then the last one is that CEO will submit a detailed account of cost and value of the new mandated services of community development, public safety, regional transportation, and collaborative services before December 2024.
you've heard the resolution. Could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Seconder? Dr. Grant? On the question? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Motion carried. Oh, we have one, Ray is voted against.
Can I clarify?
Did you actually record my making a vote on the original motion?
We didn't hear him.
Didn't hear you.
We didn't hear
We
you.
didn't hear you, Ray.
Did you record my negative vote on the original motion to approve the budget number 6?
Now we have.
No, we didn't, but we will now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a clarification for his vote against for the 6th? No, did I miss it?
No, I don't think we needed that.
No. Okay, so we're done with the budget. Item number 5.2, Summit.
Okay. Neil and Andrew have been very patient here. Seems like every time I invite Andrew, he sees a little bit more, but well done.
Those good comments. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
John, can you see the presentation? Now? You can't see it?
No, I can't.
Can't see it? Okay, I'm going to share it. Can you see it now, John and Ray?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. The floor is with Neil.
Perfect. Okay, can you hear me online?
I can hear you well.
Okay, great. Look, Neil Jacobson, and I am giving the FRSC team a bit of help or support in organizing the inaugural 2024 summit. And as per that opening slide, we have a date, and I think everyone around the board here is aware of the date. It's November 28th, 2024. So just, and I'll go through this fairly efficiently here. I've just got a few slides. So just, I guess, a few initial logistical observations. So the session will be held at the Trade Convention Center. It will run from 12 noon to 6 p.m. at the latest. And I do want to read that second paragraph because I think it's an important one. The summit will provide an opportunity to learn more about our region's strengths, the FRSC's strategic plan, and the Commission's key priorities. The summit will also provide participants with the opportunity to share their feedback with respect to regional cooperation, improving public services, and the FRSC's 2025 work plan. So having sat through the budget deliberations, I know that feedback and input and validation is critically important as you go forward. So I really see this event, and from an organizational perspective, we built in several feedback mechanisms. So it's not designed as a group of people standing up and presenting to an audience. There's some interactive components that will enable your key stakeholders to provide feedback. So that third paragraph, just the reference to supporting better public services through collaborative and sustainable growth. So it's really a foundational theme of this organization, but we really want to reflect that in the summit. In terms of summit objectives, the first one is around teamwork and vision, and it's an opportunity to get your councillors together and to get the Rural District Advisory Committee together, get them in one room. And I know how challenging that is. Logistically, we won't be able to get everybody in the room, but we have some thoughts around securing feedback for those that can't attend. But as someone who's lived in the municipal realm here in this region, I do know how important that is. Advancing collective ownership of the Fundy region, critical mandate of this organization. Advocating for this organization and member communities. Number 4, renewing and enhancing channels of communications between FRC member communities and newly elected Fundy region MLAs. So every provincial election is a reset, and we just had a big reset. We had a big reset here in this region. So when I was looking around the region, we had 2 re-elected MLAs, Minister Glenn Savoy and Bill Oliver, and then we have 7 new MLAs extending from Hampton St. Martin's to the Fundy Isles and Morinville, which touches your service area. So it's a big area, a lot of change, a lot of new faces, 7 new faces. And also it's a change in government, and that is a big reset. So I think the timing of this post-election, which was planned, is critically important in terms of providing that opportunity to engage those new MLAs. And I know there's efforts to reach out to them right away to try and get this date on their calendars. So again, I just think that's a strategic opportunity. So number 5, just creating an opportunity or venue for local communities to discuss and respond to the 2025 work plan, challenges, opportunities. And it's a reflection on a big reset. Last bullet, basically an opportunity to also work with the UNNB to build alignment on the focus and outcomes associated with the summit, as well as enabling strategy for 2025. And I know we have the new chair of that organization as well, represented here in the region. So I think it's a great opportunity in terms of aligning these various components. In terms of summit participants, the FRSC Board of Directors, all of you, the FRSC Municipal Councils, the Rural District Advisory Committee, FRSC committees, all the committee members, and the staff. And I'm going to talk a little bit about staff as I go through this in terms of their importance in delivering this event. Senior municipal staff, the CAOs, and 2 additional team members, and efforts have already gone out to reach out to all of the CAOs. And community leaders and newly elected Fundy Region provincial MLAs who will all be invited to the reception. So, I've already touched on this, but half-day session. Trade Convention Center. In terms of focus, education, awareness building, team building, relationship building, getting community leaders in the room, our new MLAs in the room, and visioning in terms of looking forward in terms of 2025 priorities and starting to get into some of the granular elements around work plan and priorities. The one word I wanted to add to this list is listening, because I do think it's a great opportunity to listen to your stakeholders. We designed it so, again, it's going to be interactive, intense, productive, but fun. And we originally put this concept together with the anticipation of the follow-up session in early 2025 involving the Premier and the Minister responsible for local government. But I will say we had this discussion yesterday. If we can get them in the room on the 28th, that would be an amazing opportunity. So obviously lots going on in terms of establishing the new government, but if we can have one or the other in the room on the 28th, we'll build that into it as well. In terms of the agenda, introductions, lunch and keynote address, we're working on an interesting concept in terms of a keynote panel. I won't share, we're just finalizing it as we speak, but we have some really interesting folks that I think would add a whole lot to this discussion from within the region, but also outside the region, with a provincial lens and a much broader regional lens. So we're excited about that. Obviously an opportunity to talk about FRSC priorities, your strategic plan and your priorities for coming out of this budget process for 2025. An opportunity to work with Envision St. John, so great to have you here. And also an opportunity to focus on issues around the municipal facilities, the Greater St. John regional facilities, and I previously mentioned the UND and their involvement. We will also be organizing facilitated interactive workshops based on the FRSC's priorities. So we have an interesting model in terms of having people engage on the Commission's priorities, and then we finish off with a meet and greet reception and close into the workshop remarks. So just to wrap up, a couple of comments. One, there will be multiple ways of soliciting feedback. So there'll be a feedback mechanism for participants during the summit. There'll be an opportunity for them to share feedback after the summit. And we're also working on a mechanism for participants, councillors or committee members who can't be there to provide feedback after the session if they're unable to attend. So sort of 3 different approaches. One other thing I did want to mention, I want to come back to FRSC staff. One of the, I think, exciting opportunities of the summit is it will be led by your staff. You're building a really strong team. So it won't be me, or it won't be an external facilitator. It will be the FRSC team, the staff of this organization, that will be leading the summit and engaging with participants. I think it's a great opportunity to showcase their work, their expertise, and their collective talent. And a lot of work involved in pulling this together, but the team will be delivering it. And I think that'll carry a lot of weight in terms of building that connection in terms of what this organization is doing. And just as a final thought, I just want to go back to the comment that Mayor Merrifield mentioned around demonstrating value. and I know you built into your budget the opportunity to do this next year. I think this could be, if we do it right, this could be a really powerful feedback mechanism in showing and demonstrating that value year after year. So I'll stop there, but that's how it's coming together, and lots of work goes into these, but it really is being led by your team.
Thank you, sir.
It's a good receive and file.
Can I have a motion to receive and file,
So
please?
moved.
On the question? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Motion carried. Thank you.
Andrew Beckett.
Mr. Andrew Beckett is up, has the floor.
Morning, everyone. Well, soon to be afternoon. Great to be here. I should say at the outset that I'm wearing two hats today. I'm here from Envision St. John as playing a support role for the bid committee that's working on the 2025 Canada Games. But I'm also a member of the bid committee. I've agreed to take on the finance role for the games bid, so I've been actively involved in the bid process as well. In discussions that Phil and I have had over the last several weeks, we thought it would be worthwhile at this stage. We're not looking for any motions to be passed at all by the commission at this point in time, but thought it would be worthwhile to review the motion that is required by the Canada Games Council to support the bid process and to explain the provisions of the motion so that you have an understanding of it for when it comes forward. I would expect at this point in time, the November meeting, that's subject to getting confirmation of the people from the Canada Games Council before we proceed. So in terms of the motion,